There's a lot of ways that you can play Pathfinder. Pathfinder's been around for more than a decade now. You can play the original 3.75, as it's lovingly called. They've had two different editions of the adventure card game. They've got a second edition, which is now going to be re-envisioned as a remastered edition. And the subject matter has even been taken on by Beatles and Grimm's. But with all that said, I think I've got a new favorite way to play Pathfinder. And here it is, Pathfinder for Savage Worlds. This is Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. Let's get into it. So a little bit of my history with Pathfinder. I originally started playing the first edition of Pathfinder shortly after it was released, when my group grew tired of 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons, and more specifically, I grew tired of DMing Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition because it was a lot of work. Now, I didn't realize what I was getting into because Pathfinder 1st edition was also quite a bit of work, but at least it was different. It was something that was much more like the game system that I love from 3rd edition, and as I'd broken my group in through 4th edition, I was able to get them to play a crunchier game like Pathfinder at this point. And along with playing the 1st edition of Pathfinder, I was also a pre-release purchaser of the Pathfinder adventure card game at Gen Con the year that it was released. And I was very excited to play that. I got a lot of good gaming out of that, and it was actually my first solo board game. I was very impressed with how it did capture the spirit of the Pathfinder role-playing game. At the time, I was without a group, and I was needing to scratch that itch, and the Pathfinder adventure card game did a great job of that. So whenever I reestablished a group early in the pandemic, within a month of the pandemic, I had started a new RPG group. One of the first systems I looked at was Pathfinder 2nd edition. And while I didn't start with that, I started with Old School Essentials, I quickly switched over to Pathfinder 2nd edition. I was able to get my group on board, and we started playing through a Pathfinder campaign and finished that up, and everybody was very happy with the options, with the gameplay, and generally with the aesthetic of Pathfinder 2nd edition. Currently, I'm on my second campaign of Pathfinder 2nd edition, now going through the Abomination Vaults for the last year and a half or so. And we are getting close to the last third of that adventure, and I am growing a little bit wary as the characters get higher level of the attrition-based combat that accompanies Pathfinder and most RPGs, to be truthful. And I found myself looking for an alternative when they announced that they were going to do a remaster of Pathfinder 2nd edition already. Not really adding much new, actually more subtraction of some things that are still a firm part of the OGL. And I thought, this might be a good time to explore Pathfinder for Savage Worlds. I already liked Savage Worlds as a system, and I'd been eyeballing the Pathfinder box since it came out. So shortly after the announcement that Pathfinder was going to be remastered, I purchased the Pathfinder for Savage Worlds line, and I've talked to my group about it, and we've decided that this is where we're going to head as soon as we get done with the Abomination Vaults. And despite being relatively new compared to the other options in the Pathfinder series, Pathfinder for Savage Worlds already has a very impressive catalog. As you can see, they've got the Ultimate Core box set, which has all of your bennies and your power tokens and your Game Master screen, your core rules, and your bestiary, so on and so forth. They've got, of course, you can buy the separate core rules book, and you can get a companion which has the random encounters and lots of information about the Inner Sea area. You can also pick up the Advanced Player's Guide on pre-order right now from the Pinnacle website. The physical copies haven't shipped, but they provide you with the PDF immediately. They've converted the entire Rise of the Rune Lords adventure path for Pathfinder for Savage Worlds. This is the same adventure path that was the original for the Pathfinder adventure card game, which allows me to experience that in a new way. But that's just fluff. Today, I'm going to tell you why I am going to convert from Pathfinder 2nd Edition to Pathfinder for Savage Worlds. I'm going to give you my 5 reasons that I prefer this system over 2nd Edition. First, Pathfinder for Savage Worlds has a much simpler character creation process, but without losing choice. The characters are made up of attributes, skills, hindrances, edges, and powers. That's it. You do choose your race, and the races are very well done. They translate over to the Savage World system in a way that very closely mirrors what those races look like in Pathfinder, the regular game. And as your characters advance, rather than having to keep track of experience points and lots of different rules that all change, and bonuses to hit that change every level, and bonuses to skills that change every single level, every time they make an advance, they choose one thing. And it doesn't have to be specific to their class. They could choose anything to further develop their character and make them into the hero they want them to be. Number 2, the flexible spell system. So with Pathfinder for Savage Worlds, it has the Savage Worlds spell system, which involves powers. These powers are shown in the book, but they're also on these cards. And the powers are very versatile because rather than having a magic missile, lightning bolt, color spray, ice bolt, flaming hands, and a dozen other different ranged damage spells, you have bolt and you have blast. Everything else is either a modifier, which you can use additional power points, which are like your mana, to adjust on the fly. And you have trappings, which is the fluff description of what you're doing with your spell. So with a very simple system, where you don't have to memorize hundreds of different spells and know exactly what spell you're needing, you just take the very robust tool set they give you, create, and all the spells follow the same general rules of play. Number 3, the clever implementation of class edges. So Pathfinder for Savage Worlds strayed a little bit from the standard Savage World system, and I think it's going to work really well with my group and with many groups that are converting from a more traditional RPG, a class-based RPG, to Savage Worlds. With their class edges, you get a very special edge. Edges are like feats if you are not familiar with Savage Worlds, but they tend to be a little bit more flavorful than a feat and a little bit more powerful probably in the grander scheme of things. Well, the class edges, every character in Pathfinder gets one for free. They don't have to take one. They could use that to get a background edge instead, but you're probably going to want a class edge because they're very good. The class edges do a good job at replicating the feel of the Pathfinder classes without restricting you into the rigid format that is a vestigial remnant of the original game systems upon which Pathfinder was built. And along with the class edge that you pick at first, at the character creation, there is no level. There are additional branches of that as you get more powerful that allow you to partake in further aspects of that class if you have taken the previous class edge. Number 4, faster combat. In the Savage World system, combat is not attrition-based, it is much more action-based. Most enemies are going to be what's called an extra. Extras do not have extra wounds. If they get wounded, they are done. They're knocked out. Now, the big bosses, the bads, the leaders of the groups may be a wild card. Even then, wild cards are going to have 3 wounds, and then on the 4th, they're dead. And when you consider that dice explode, and you could very easily end up doing 3 to 4 wounds on a single really well-placed hit, combat can be quite deadly, both for the players and for the NPCs. And that makes combat really matter, and it makes it very dramatic compared to attrition-based slogs where you know several turns ahead of time if there's even a possibility that you're going to die, most likely. And lastly, number 5, the endless resources that are available for Savage Worlds. You've got the Fantasy Companion. In the standard Suede book, you've got the race creation, or ancestry as it is now known in Pathfinder. You've got all of the different genre-specific add-ons that you can use with Deadlands and Rifts and the Superpowers Companion. And you've even got other fantasy worlds that you might want to take bits and pieces from and insert into your Pathfinder game, such as Lankmar, which is a fully developed campaign setting for Pathfinder Savage Worlds. And those are the 5 things that I think that Pathfinder for Savage Worlds does better than standard Pathfinder or Pathfinder 2nd Edition for my particular game group. But I'd love to hear what you think about Pathfinder for Savage Worlds, and if you haven't tried it or looked at it, I'd love to hear why not. If you enjoy Pathfinder 2nd Edition, if you're on the fence about whether you want to jump into Pathfinder Remastered or not, I think this is definitely a game that you should give a try. All you actually have to play this game is going to be the core rules and the bestiary. So for 2 books, $80, you've got all the rules that you need to play this game. And if you want to go a little bit deeper, as you can see, there's lots of options. And because Pathfinder for Savage Worlds is built upon the Savage World system, you have infinite possibilities for character creation and advancement. Because this isn't a class-based system. This is a character-based system. So, like I said, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share them in the comments. And if you did enjoy the video, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, this has been Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. Good gaming, and God bless.